Hello gamers, I'm KCL, and in this video I will share with you updates regarding Throne and Liberty that have been made available with the announcement of the Korean release. A lot of information has been shared and the game went through a lot of changes. Unlike the previous information that we have after various tests, this information is reflective of what the game will provide at launch. That being said, I will try to condense the relevant information and not waste your time. However, it will be a long video, so feel free to use the timestamps if you have no interest in any particular topic or if you are already aware of it. Before we go into the nitty-gritty details, I want to say two things that I think are important. This is a multiplayer warning. Shocking, I know. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but considering the current state of MMORPGs, I feel like this needs to be said. This game is an MMO with a massive focus on the multiplayer element. The vast majority of features and content have a multiplayer and community focus, so you should be aware that if you intend to play this game, you will have to do so with others, or at the very least be open to joining a community. The second thing I want to say is I was wrong, and I am quite happy that I was. I did not think that they will disable AutoCombat and redesign the game to make up for this change. Much to my surprise, they actually did. They have completely removed AutoCombat from both the Korean and the global versions, and they have made a few changes to accommodate this. The leveling requirements will now be a tenth of what they used to be, and they also have redesigned zones, moving elements from the second half of the game to the first half. This change obviously was a bit rushed, so there are still improvements to be made, especially to the open world content, but they are actively working on it, and even after launch I am sure they will continue to improve this experience. Of course, this still leaves the massive bot problem, but for now, let's see what else they do to deal with it. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get to the juicy information. The game will release on the 7th of December, and this release will be only for Korea. If you are not up to date with Throne and Liberty, the devs wanted to release it globally at the same time, but they signed a contract with Amazon's game studio, and AGS could not deliver the game this year. So we are left with a delay. Most likely, this will be between 1 to 3 months. Fingers crossed that AGS does not decide to push it back further. I know it feels bad that us as global players always get treated like second-class citizens, but on the bright side, at the very least we will not have to wait for years to play this game, and a few months will pass quite quickly. The next element that I should talk about is monetization. This is one of the elements that I got asked about multiple times, and a decent amount of people seem to be interested in. This game is free to play, but not really. It will feature two types of passes, a growth pass and a battle pass. They have a free section and a pay section. This paid section should be treated as an optional subscription to the game, as they will offer both cosmetics and various progression items. What is different from a normal battle pass system is that even once they are completed, you will be able to level them further, and this will reward you with points that can be spent to obtain various items. On top of the battle passes, the game will also have a cash shop. This cash shop will have both cosmetics and boosting items. Things in the cash shop will be purchased with Lucent, which is the game's cash shop currency. The game will also have an action house, and the trading between players will be done through it, with the exception of guild items that you will be able to trade or sell to your guild members. I mentioned the action house in this monetization section because, unlike most MMORPGs, trading between players will be done using Lucent currency. We have seen this system in Warframe, and it does work out quite well. This system will allow players that don't have the possibility or do not want to spend to sell items and be able to access the items in the cash shop. If this sounds like pay to win to you, it's because it very much is. But this ship has sailed regardless of the system, since real money traders and bots will always exist, and regardless if you like it or not, you should be ready to accept reality and that progression games will always be pay to win. So all this system will really do is allow players that cannot spend to enjoy the cash shop by simply playing the game. It's up to you to decide if this is acceptable to you or not and act accordingly. The next element we should talk about is combat changes. You might already be aware that the game was changed from a static, old-school combat to a more responsive and dynamic combat that almost feels like a hybrid action combat despite being top targeting. A change to combat that not a lot of people are aware of is that you can combine any two weapons. The way stats and damage scale has been changed, and now this allows you the freedom to play with whatever two weapons you enjoy most. So you can even play with a greatsword and a staff, or a dagger and a wand, whatever combination works for you. The other element that I should mention is, unlike the typical games where you have two weapon types, like New World or Guild Wars 2, in Throne and Liberty you only have one skill bar. You can put both weapon skills on there, and when using a skill from a secondary weapon, the character will automatically swap to it. This means that you can seamlessly swap between weapons, and this little addition makes weapon swapping feel so much better, hence why I felt it needed to be mentioned. Combat is tied into the progression system. For example, skills can change the way they function as you upgrade them. So let's talk about the progression systems. Aside from leveling, you will be able to upgrade both your equipment and skills using an enhancing system. This is fairly similar to Lost Ark. It's an RNG system where you can get lucky and upgrade with less materials, but you shouldn't expect it. As you fail to upgrade, the chance stacks and you will eventually reach 100%. Basically, the game has a bit of RNG to give you that dopamine rush when you get lucky. On top of this, your equipment will never break or downgrade if you fail. You can also even transfer your enhancement levels if you chose to reroll to a different weapon. Another progression element is collecting pets and morphs. Pets will help with collecting dropped item and using potions, while morphs are traveling transformations. As you collect more and more of these, they will give you slight bonuses. This can be collected in-game or bought from the cash shop. I have talked about the underlying systems, so let's talk about the world of Throne and Liberty and what is the content that you can find in it. The game features an absolutely massive open world that at this time is only rivaled by Black Desert Online. This world will feature a day and night cycle, eclipses, and even weather changes, and this will in turn affect both the way your skills work and even the content available. For example, some open world dungeons will only be available during night or during a raining season, or so on. At launch, the game will have 2 regions, and they will be split into 19 territories and 8 cities. The game will feature a decent story, some side quests, and even some exploration elements. There will be 6 open world dungeons, 2 world bosses, 1 for each region, and 18 other bosses. These other bosses will be split between field bosses, open world dungeons, instant dungeons, and guild dungeons. The field bosses and the open world dungeon bosses are a bit simplistic because they are seen as PvX activities and they can be contested by others. However, instance dungeons and guild dungeons will be a more difficult challenge, and I gotta say, from what I have seen so far, they look pretty damn fun. I mentioned earlier world bosses, and as the name suggests, they will be much more difficult bosses that can be found in the open world. Players are meant to unite and defeat them, but there is also the possibility for people to PvP over them. The game will also feature both open world PvE and PvP events. For those of us that love PvP, on top of the open world PvP events and field boss PvP, there will be castle sieges, territory wars, and even guild escort missions. After winning a siege, you will be required to transport your taxes. This will be done in the open world through escort missions and without any of the advantages a siege provides. There is also some crafting elements, but they will be done through NPCs, and I do not think they are worth much consideration for now, since they are not on the level of BDO or New World. I will be honest, I think this game will be more enjoyable for people that do both PvE and PvP. But if you have no interest in PvP, you will be able to play the game without ever engaging in PvP, and there are no progression exclusive rewards for PvP players. That being said, those that do PvP will have a bit of an advantage. For example, field bosses and guild dungeons will provide the exact same potential rewards. but the field boss drops will be sellable on the auction house, while the guild dungeon rewards will only be tradable with guild members. They also mention their update schedule and some future plans. They plan to drop major content updates every 3 to 4 months, and the first 2 major patches will bring a new zone and all the additional content that comes with it. They have also mentioned they have plans to introduce new weapons, new dungeons, and all that content that should be expected. On top of this, they plan to expand on the non-combat features of the game. I will have to assume they are referring to life skilling content and exploration elements here. Having played plenty of Korean games before, I will go further and even say they will probably have various events and other content drops in between. I believe this is pretty standard for Koreans and in general Eastern practices. If you will enjoy the game at launch, you shouldn't be too worried about the future of the game. The next bit is very important to me in MMOs, and it is the visual aspect. As we all should know by now, the true endgame is fashion. Of course, the world and the visuals in general are absolutely stunning, and this game will be a contender for video in terms of graphics. But let's talk about fashion. Just like in any MMO that respects itself, you will be able to equip costumes. These costumes will come with great customization options. It will have a dye option, and you will even be able to change the patterns on these costumes. To me, this system looks very similar to BDO, so I'm fairly confident that I will not be disappointed when it comes to fashion. You will also be able to customize your travel forms and pets, because the bonuses they offer are collection based, so you will be able to choose whichever of them you like visually. This is all the information so far that I think is relevant to the Throne and Liberty launch. For me, this is one of the most anticipated MMOs, and while I still have my doubts about the bot situation and how this will affect the overall game, I am overall very happy with the direction they are taking the game, and even pleasantly surprised by some of the decisions they made. Let's hope that Amazon does not drag their feet and we can enjoy the game as soon as possible. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and all that jazz if you feel like it. See you in the next one, gamers.